All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with Joel Gandara. Joel, welcome to the show, man. So awesome to have you.
My pleasure to be here with you, Kevin. Look forward to this.
Same, same. You made the comment before we heard to let's just see if this is going to be valuable. I was like, Joe, I am expecting this to be a great experience and it's going to be valuable. And
Good.
so,
Let's do it.
Oh, and I just want to I want to start by giving a shout out to Noah Rosenfarb because he is the one that connected you and you and I probably wouldn't even be talking if it weren't for him. So I just want to honor that relationship. And I had him on the podcast recently, and after him having the experience, he's like, Kevin, you have got to interview my buddy Joel for your podcast. And so you and I, we got to have a conversation and connect a little bit, get to know each other a little bit, and we were both like, yes, let's do this. And so I am totally stoked for this conversation today, Joel. And what I want to do is just kind of start off. I want to turn it over to you so that we can set a little bit of context for our listeners. And I want you to share, I'm going to kind of cover a few things broadly and just kind of let you go and take it from there and where you feel led to go. But I want you to be able to share, about what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you're doing and the impact you're making, and also give us a little bit of the backstory of how we got here and how you got into doing what you do.
Yeah, so I'll give you the quick right now where I'm at in my life,
Okay,
and then the backstory may make sense and make it more interesting. So
perfect.
today, I get to do whatever I want because I don't have to rely on a paycheck or making payroll or all the stresses that I had for decades as I built businesses. So today, what I do is I wrote a book and I have a program. I have a men's side of it, and then my wife runs the women's side of it. And we get to help people. We help them become the best version of themselves. We would do this for free if we thought it would have an impact. Instead, we charge them $200 for 31 days because once they write, give a credit card, maybe then they feel like they're invested in it and they'll try a little bit more. And I've tried it both ways. I tried the free thing. It wasn't impacting lives, but we started really making an impact and changing lives, and not just the person who signs up for the program, their spouse, their kids. I have a guy now who through a sad situation, had to adopt his grandchild. And he says, the things that I learned in this program have now made me a better grandfather. And here's my before and after for my grandson. Here's his behavior. Here are his grades. And wow, that was very impactful. So that's what I get to do now. So it's a book and a program, and guys go through it. I do it in groups of 24.
Okay.
24 guys every month go through. Sometimes I go a little over, sometimes I stay right around 24. And then after they're done, 31 days later, it's 31 days of challenges. Every day you do a challenge, physical and mental, each day. But then we communicate. We built a community. We chat on WhatsApp. We have a Zoom once a week during those 31 days. And at the end, I hand select a small group of those 24 men, and I invite them into something called the Brotherhood. And then there I bring them speakers, doctors, business professionals. I mean, big time guys who have exited for over 100 million. I brought a few of those. And we have annual retreats, 5 this year, all over the country,
Wow.
all over the
Wow.
world. And it's all optional, whatever you want to attend. Do you want to be in our book club? There's no additional cost. There's a small monthly amount that guys pay, but hardly anyone ever leaves. So I know we're on track. We started it 2 years ago. Over 500 guys have done my challenge, and then over 100 men have joined the Brotherhood. So that's where I'm at today. You want to hear how I got here?
Absolutely. I want to hear the backstory, Joel.
I was born in Havana, Cuba, under communism and third world conditions. And my mom was a high school physics teacher, and my dad was a technician that would fix radios, all government run organizations. Obviously, there's no private business in those types of environments. And it was really sad. Here's a sad part. My dad, at 17 years old, was sent to a labor camp, a forced labor camp by the communists who were now controlling Cuba back then. And at that camp, my grandparents showed up to visit my dad with all his siblings. And they said, we have an opportunity to leave this country, but we don't want to leave you behind. So we're going to make you make the decision. Do we leave or do we stay? And he said, get out of here. Go to the US. You have an opportunity to get on a plane and go. Just get me out of here one day. Well, that one day came 13 years later. By then, my dad was 30 years old when he got reunited with his family. By then, he was married. He had my brother and I, And it looked like we were never going to get out. But something big happened. 1980, the Mariel boat lifts. If you're familiar with the movie Scarface by Al Pacino, that's the story. That's when we came out. So, it was a nerve-wracking, very scary. I got chills right now talking about it. We got on a boat and spent 12 hours on that boat, and 4 of it was in a really rough ocean, really rough storm. When the boat went up, we saw sky, and when it went down, we saw 4 walls of water. It's really tough for me. It's my biggest fear in life is the ocean and getting hurt like that and drowning, because there was no chance. If that boat would have tipped over, and a bunch of them did, we would have died. Here in Miami, there's memorials for people that lost their lives during that mass exodus. And it's because, very scary stuff. So we got here, got to the greatest country on earth with all the opportunities. We moved from Miami, Key West, where we landed. We got sent to where my grandparents had established themselves near Oakland, California. And that's where I grew up. We grew up very poor, not good neighborhoods, kind of rough. My mom went from being a physics teacher and my dad from being a technician to much lower jobs, but in the US. So we had an income and we had the ability to make money and have the food we wanted to buy. So my mom started cleaning hotel rooms at the Sir Francis Drake Hotel in downtown San Francisco. And my dad got a technical job fixing up equipment at a not-for-profit Christian radio station. So, they provided what they could. Yeah, very simple existence. I look back at the pictures and I say, wow, we were poor. We were very poor. I remember a time we moved and my parents, 2 years into being here, had saved up a couple $1,000s, and that was enough to buy a little tiny townhouse. And they were smart. They didn't waste their money. They saved it. We never went on vacations. We never had luxury. I never had Nike or Reebok when I was young. I had Payless Shoe Source shoes, the cheapest things. But my parents were smart and bought a house. Only problem was they couldn't afford a refrigerator. So for a while we had just a cooler with ice, and my dad would change the ice every few days. And that's where we got our food from. So things were tough. But in 4th grade, I had a tremendous opportunity. My aunt walked my cousins and I to the corner store where my grandmother lived, about 20 minutes away. And she gave us each maybe $1 and said, buy yourself something. And a lot of the cousins, a big group of us, bought food and snacks. I bought these little collector cards. They were called Garbage Pail Kid cards. And they made fun of back then of the Cabbage Patch dolls. Yeah. So I bought some packs. I took it to school the next day on Monday. The beauty is that they didn't have these products near where I went to school, but they had them where my grandmother lived, which is great. This is way before the internet, decades before. So I got to show these off and everybody went nuts and they wanted to buy them. And I remember calculating what I paid for them after my aunt gave me the $1 and realizing maybe they were like 5 cents and I sold them for 10 cents and I made some money. And then I started getting really nice cards that I'd sell for 25 cents, $1. And every Sunday I'd go back to my grandma's house to visit and buy more cards. So all my money kept rotating, but growing. And in about a month, I had $50 and I bought myself this Transformer robot that was massive. It was the biggest one they sold, Omega Supreme, it was called. And I got to play with that and feel like a winner and feel like an entrepreneur. I didn't know the word till many years later, but I got to buy myself a toy that my parents could never have dreamt. I mean, my Christmases were socks and sweaters and slacks and dress shoes and things I didn't want, but I got to buy myself my own toys. So in high school, I started buying chocolates and selling them. I always had a job from 12 years old on. And so I just hustled. And if I was at school, I'm there to play baseball and make money. So that's the only reason I showed up in the mornings, because I thought, I don't want to go to school today, but then they won't let me go to practice and I won't make $30 net profit on the chocolates. So that's all. I was there to not learn. I was there to sell chocolates. I started doing garage sales. Found a guy selling underwear one day, samples. He worked for Jockey International. He was an independent rep, and he was stuck with all these samples at the end of the collection. So he was selling them there for $3. I talked him down to $1. I bought 500 of them. That's all he had. And I took him to the flea market, sold them for $6, and 500 turned into 3,000. And I remember leaving the flea market thinking, this sure beats my full-time job at this point. And I was out of high school that makes $8 an hour. The only problem is the guy only gets samples every 6 months, but he did call me. For 11 years, he'd say, Joel, I've got 2,000 samples. I got 2,500 samples, but he could never give me what I wanted, which was 10,000 samples. So I started digging on the internet. I stopped doing flea markets. I discovered eBay in July of '99. I opened my first account and started selling on there. And then I started finding brands in other countries that could start selling to me and let me distribute. And I did that and I grew it. I started growing other people's brands, unknown brands in the US, where I started buying over $1 million from them and selling it here wholesale to stores. So that's what I started doing,
Okay.
selling about 2 million in wholesale. Then I discovered that I could create my own brand. And by the way, out of necessity, it wasn't even out of greed. Like if I said, well, if I made my own brand, I'll make more money. It wasn't that. It was this brand that I was bringing in from overseas backstabbed me and started contacting the stores that I was selling to. After we had a verbal
Oh,
agreement, they would never do that. They started doing that. And that put me in a bad situation. But like most bad things in my life, that was the precursor to great things that would come. So when I thought I was being backstabbed and things were going to go really bad because they contacted my clients, that forced me to create my own brand. And that very first brand we created in apparel did over $1 million of retail the first year. And I just kept growing, or in the first 13 months roughly. And I kept growing from there, started developing more brands. And then I ended up buying 14 different underwear and swimwear companies. And I grew those to over 7 figures in EBITDA. And with no partners, no debt, I just did this $1 at a time and living a very
wow.
basic and simple life
Wow.
while I built it. And in the summer of 2023, I sold that company. So now is when I get to do whatever I want because I earned money all those years and I put it away and I invested it. The exit wasn't massive. It was nothing to write home about, but it was good. And here I am. Now I get to do whatever I want. And I get to
Yeah.
be here with you.
Wow. That is a heck of a story. And I got to tell you, when you were talking about your boat trip over here in 1980, that really hit home with me because I spent 7 years working as a commercial fisherman from 1988 to 1995. And in 1995, I almost lost my life when we got hit by a rogue wave and I got thrown across the boat and I hit the railing. In fact, this scar on my chin is from hitting the railing on the side of the boat. And so when
Mm.
you're telling that story, and you were talking about how, man, I'm getting goosebumps talking about this even. I was doing the same exact thing when you're talking about it, man, because I
Mm.
know what that feels like. And that is like scary. That is really scary, you know?
Yeah, the ocean is a scary place. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you that when I say 4 hours, it's easy to say those words, but to feel what it was like to be in a boat 4 hours of up and down and
Yeah.
thrashing around,
Yeah.
and we were overcrowded, and it was yelling, crying, screaming for 4 hours. It was like being in hell for 4 hours, knowing that you could die because the reminder's constantly around you, the water's splashing you. It was scary. I still think about it and I still get nervous.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally get it, man. I totally get it. Well, that is a heck of a story. And so um, I want to switch gears a little bit now that we've got some context set here. And Joel, you are such a perfect example of why I love hosting this podcast so much because everybody has a story and everybody's, I mean, like, man, entrepreneurs, they have some amazing and sometimes really crazy story. And that, I mean, you definitely qualify there. And through telling our stories, that's how people really get to know us a little bit. And it's through that's how we make connection with people and stuff, you know. And I guarantee you that there's some people listening to this right now thinking, man, Kev, I really like Joel, man. and so and don't worry, we won't let you down. We'll let you know how you can get in touch with him if you want to and stuff. We'll do that before we're done. And so, but I want to switch gears just a little bit. And so I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of our listeners. So, Joel, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Well, the answer is yes. And the answer is actually heck yes. There's so many people that, our life is not a choose your own adventure book where you could read and it gets to a crossroads and it says, if you're going to go down the left, go to page 32. I used to read books like that when I was
Yep.
younger.
Yep.
And if you're going to go down the right and fight the dragon, go to page 28. But life's not like that. So I don't know where I'd be had I not met some of these people. But as you were asking the question, I was starting to have flashbacks of just pictures of different people's faces, my wife, my mentor, a supplier, a vendor, a customer, so many but I'm going to pick one. Um, his name's Wilfredo, and he lives in Colombia. And I had read the book, The Secret,
Oh,
when I was
yes.
younger. And it really impacted me. And it said to think positively and envision things happening. So I started saying things differently. I started saying, I'm gonna meet someone who owns a factory and can help me manufacture my own brand of products. I want to meet that person. And 3 days after reading the book, I said, I don't know if this is all true, that you could think about things and they're going to happen. But I bought the book and I spent 3 days reading it. Let me play along. So I played the game of positive thinking, which was a huge change for me after growing up in a bad neighborhood and just seeing negativity around me. And I said, let's try to be positive. Let's think about what might happen. I started telling everybody, I'm looking to meet somebody who owns a factory who can manufacture my own first brand. And so I got some introductions. For 3 days straight, I got introductions. And this was amazing to me, that just because I'm throwing it out there. I remember strangers. I was at Chick-fil-A in the playground because we had 2 little kids back then. Now we have 4 kids. And they were playing, and I was talking to this lady, and she said, well, I know somebody. And she gave me some information. I talked to that person. Someone else told me. But the third one was someone who just called my wife and said, hey, we have some friends from Colombia known for manufacturing garments, and they own a factory, and they're here in the US looking for clients. Would you like to meet them? And I told my wife, yes, let's meet them. So the very next day, I met them at the mall. It was a husband and a wife, and they presented to us what they manufacture. And I was in the men's space of apparel, and they were in the women's. But I'll talk to them, sure. Well, we tried doing some business together. It didn't end up working out. They manufactured some women's brand for us. But here's how things just get interesting. The guy who I was working with, he had a business with his father, him and his brother, the 3 of them. And it just didn't work out. They were offering products that we tried, we couldn't sell them. But when that business relationship ended, his brother reached out to me, his younger brother, Wilfredo, and he said, hey, I know we were selling you women's stuff. That's because what we do. But I want to start a factory, my own factory, that makes men's underwear, swimwear, athletic apparel. And that's right in line with what you do with all the other brands you bring in. But maybe I can help you. And that timing was amazing, because it's right when I got backstabbed from a big brand, well, a brand that was nothing in the US, and we grew it over the years. And then that brand started reaching out to my clients. And that was a little scary, because I thought I was going to lose my business. Well, this guy and I, Wilfredo, took a leap of faith. He helped me develop my first brand, design it, put everything in place. And then it was time to make my initial payment. Here I'd been buying other people's products, so I don't have to manufacture them. I don't have to design it. I don't have to do anything. I don't need a logo, a name. It was all done for me. But that was my practice to get to where I had to be. Well, I had to wire $80,000 for my first order. And I remember being so nervous and so scared. I had the money because I saved, but $80,000 up until that point, I hadn't
Big chunk
spent
of
that on
change.
anything other than houses, buying a house and a second house and all. So I sent the money, and he came through. He manufactured this beautiful collection that we tested samples and saw that everything was good. And it was just an absolute success. So here's the beautiful part. I got to be in Colombia many times when I was visiting the factory, and we went to dinner. Wilfredo's wife and I, and also they took their head employee, this girl who ran a lot of the things behind the scenes, and she asked, how did you guys meet? So he's telling this story to her as I'm just a listener there. And here's the beautiful part that he goes, I went in to make the final pitch. I was in Miami visiting him. My wife was in the car because our son was not feeling well, so she was waiting out there. And he said Joel agreed to $80,000 and he would wire it that week. And later he did. But she said he walked out. He said, I walked out to the car to my wife. We drove off, and I go, you're not going to believe it. We could start our factory. And with that 80,000 that I sent him, that was his first order for this factory. I didn't realize that, because he came from a family that had a factory and all that. This was his first business. So I want to say that I was able to help him as
Yeah.
well. And we
Yeah.
remained friends. That was many, many years ago, like 15 years ago. But he really set me on a new course, because he gave me the confidence that, yes, you could produce your own brand and you could do. So anyway, I mentioned Wilfredo Adarbe, a good friend of mine. However, there's many, many guys and women, especially my wife, who've set me on a new trajectory. So I'm grateful to so many people.
Yeah. What an amazing story that is. Wilfredo, am I pronouncing it right? Wilfredo?
That's right.
Okay. And so I want to dig a little deeper on this. So I want you to, and I'm sure you can come up with a number of examples. I just want to challenge you to come up with one. It'll probably just come top of mind for you when I ask the question. But what is an example of a situation where you personally got to make a really substantial impact, and maybe it even surprised you a little bit that, like, wow, look at that. But you also know that that would have hands down never happened if not for your relationship with Wilfredo.
Mm. Well, if I would not have had that relationship, so many other pieces wouldn't have fallen into place. This is like a table full of dominoes, but you need a starting domino somewhere.
Yeah.
And maybe I had 10 starting dominoes, but this is the one that fell first. And because of that, a whole series began. Because initially I was selling other people's brands. There's
Yeah.
not a lot of future in that. They could go around you, they could go out of business, right? So because that happened, we created our first brand together. It went very well. And that enabled us to say, hey, you know what? There's room for more brands in the market. There's these other competitor brands. We could try to compete for that space. Guys who like that sort of muscle t-shirt, let's call it. So we could develop those types of muscle t-shirts. Oh, there's this other thing where they're wearing, I don't know, long boxer briefs. We can develop some new ones with some fun colors to compete for that space. And so we started developing more and more brands. But a moment that really changed my life was here I was a wholesaler. I was doing the whole trade show route, circuit. I was going to Paris, Las Vegas, New York, Atlanta. I did not enjoy going to trade shows. You're sitting in a booth. I mean, the one part I enjoyed was talking to people and hearing my customer stories and what they're looking for, how I can help them. That I loved. But I hated the travel and I hated sitting in a booth for 3 to 4 days in a row, seeing no sunlight, getting there early in the morning, leaving late at night. And this is tough. So because I was now with higher margins, producing my own brands, and I had multiple of them, I now was making a lot more money, which not only improved my life, but opened more doors. So I remember sitting at a trade show and telling a client of mine who'd been buying from me for like 9 years, and I said, hey, if you ever want to sell your website that I sell you products for, let me know, because I'd like to talk to you about that. I'd love to one day, whenever you're done doing this business, I'd like to buy a website like yours to go direct to consumer. And that was a tiny little website that was only doing about $325,000 a year in sales, but large part of it were my products. So if I'm manufacturing for $3, wholesaling to them for $7, they're turning around retailing for $15. So I said, whoa, if I could make it for $3 and turn around and sell it for $15, that would be amazing. It let me control my destiny and grow the business. Well, I bought that business. I bought it for $90,000, which was 2 times profit, fair for a little business like that. And we grew it. Our first year, we did 750,000 in sales with
Wow.
very high margins, like around 30% net profit. And then
Okay.
our second year, we did over 1 million and just kept growing. And that
Wow.
that was a catalyst that enabled us because now this site's making us many hundreds of thousands in net profit every year. That allowed us to keep buying more competitors. Now we went after brands and we went after multi-brand e-commerce sites. So we just kept going and we bought 14 of those business. That would not have been at all possible without meeting Wilfredo, manufacturing our first brand, and many
Yeah.
other things
Yeah.
happened.
What a phenomenal story that is, Joel. I mean, man, this has been a series of phenomenal stories today. And man, I mean, if everything that you have shared isn't a testament to the power of relationships, I don't know what is. I mean, that is absolutely amazing.
Well, I'll tell you something
Um,
else about
yeah,
relationships when it comes to that. I bought 14 businesses. One was listed for sale. The other 13 were friends that I made in the industry. And a lot of those were my competitors, but I reached out to them on a regular basis. I'll show you right here for anybody who's watching the video. I have these postcards with my name on it, my branding. I've always been a brand, whether I want to admit that or not. I'm not much of a marketer or a brand person, but I have these postcards. These are actually written out. I got a few written out that are going out in the mail today.
nice.
I handwrite notes, and that is a very powerful secret weapon. And I'm not embarrassed or scared to tell people because nobody takes my idea.
Yeah.
I always encourage it, and very few people do it. In fact, in my 31-day challenge, it's one of the days you got to handwrite a note and put it in the mail and send it out. It is so powerful. I did that with my competitors on a regular basis. I had it in my calendar repeating, contact all these people, and I'd send them a nice note. I'd Google them. I'd see what's going on in their life or their LinkedIn, and I'd say, "Hey, I just noticed this, this, and this. Congratulations!" And if they live far away, I'd send them a Starbucks card for $10, and I'd say, "Have a coffee on me. I know we don't live near each other. I'll see you at the next trade show." And you do that for many years, and you build a heck of a pipeline
Yeah.
in sales, in relationships. In my case, it was to buy their businesses. So I remember companies telling me, and these are small businesses. But I remember them telling me, well, obviously, the day I go to sell this business, there's no one else I'll sell it to other than you. And it's because we built this relationship. I checked in on them quarterly or more, and I sent them little gifts. I was just thoughtful. If they told me something about their dog was sick and he's going to have a surgery on the 15th, I wrote it in my calendar. And on the 15th, first thing in the morning, I'd check in with them and say, hey, I hope everything goes well with your dog or your spouse or your kid or whatever's going on in their life. And I think that I have a genuine interest in people. I really love people. So I just didn't keep that to myself. I shared it with them, and that helped build great relationships.
Yeah. 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 Wow. I mean, I have heard of that. My buddy Steve Sims, he's really big on sending, cards out like that, handwritten notes. I know in my previous company, I used to run a publishing company for 12 years. And in that 12 years, I partnered with probably about 500 entrepreneurs over that 12-year period. And when we would do projects together and it led to revenue, I always would overnight them a check that they for their percentage, but I also just include a handwritten note along with that, and just said,
Beautiful.
hey, just really simple. Just I mean, I would just pull a piece of printer paper out and sit right here at my desk and write, hey, just really in my sloppy handwriting, and
It's
just
okay.
really appreciated doing this project with you. And man, this was just such an amazing experience. Thanks so much. And then I would put that overnight envelope. And the first time I ever did that, I did that because it was a good friend of mine. And I thought, well, if I was him, I'd appreciate getting paid quickly. And so I'm just going to send him an overnight envelope, and I'm going to just write, hey, Mike, really appreciate you doing this. Man, this was a blast, and totally stoked to be serving your people that decided to jump on board. And he just calls me the next day completely beside himself. And he's like, Kevin, I've never had any experience like this. And he's like, this was such an amazing experience, start to finish. I want to introduce you to a couple other people because I know they'd appreciate having the same experience you just gave me and stuff. And
Absolutely.
and I guarantee you, Joe, people in your world that have been on the receiving end of those cards, they talk about you. They totally talk about you, and just because like I've been on the receiving end of a couple of those just little cards that
Mhm.
people send out, and it is so cool to be on the receiving end of that stuff. And
Absolutely.
just showing genuine appreciation to people in our lives that we care about and stuff. And
Yeah, and get it out of our minds. I think about my friends and people, and I care about a lot of people, but I don't want to bottle that up and keep it to myself. And
yeah,
the book that helped me realize that was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, where let people know, let them know you're thinking about them, that you care about them, and what nothing can go wrong. I've never had a negative reaction. Nobody's ever been mad that I wrote them a handwritten note, that I texted them thinking about you, hope your day's going great. Those things have never hurt. On the contrary, they've helped build tremendous relationships.
yeah, amen, absolutely. Well, Joel, for anybody that is, been sitting here listening to this, checking this out, and is thinking to themselves, man, Kev, I really love Joel's story. I love how he shows up. I'd love to find out more about what he's doing. What are any resources, any websites that we can share with them
Sure.
and stuff?
I have a podcast at joelgandara.com, but my day to day, what I just live for now, is 31dailychallenges.com. That's
Okay.
my website where guys go, or girls, separate program, and they go through a challenge for 31 days. It's $200 plus a $20 book. I guarantee there's a guarantee on there that if it doesn't change your life, you get the $200 back. You just have to do the work, and I promise that life will be changed. Improvement is for men as a better husband, better father, better just man in general, and for the women, it's called It's My Turn. And it's for women to start focusing on themselves. Sometimes women take a back seat and the kids go first and the husband goes first and they worry about the house and all these responsibilities, and many of them while they work, and they don't take a little bit of time. So that's a program that we do all on 31dailychallenges.com. People can sign up there. You can also message through there. There's a contact button, and I'd be happy to reply to any messages. I'm also on Instagram, and it's Joel Gandara, and it's got a blue check mark, so you know that one's me. And be happy to speak to anybody or have them sign up and have them be part of my community.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Joel, once again, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today and just share from your heart. My goal has always been with these podcast interviews is I just want to be able to inspire other entrepreneurs, other founders, other CEOs to just place a more intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their own lives. And with your help, Joel, today, we certainly delivered on that. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
Happy to help in any way on that mission you're on, and I think it's fantastic.
All right.